Restoring my 1983 BMW R100RT was a truly rewarding experience. But being able to ride your new restored Airhead is probably one of the greatest joys of owning a BMW motorcycle. At Cubao Customs Classics, we believe in riding what you build. Especially these Airheads. They don't belong in a garage or in your living room as a display item. It belongs on the road to be ridden for hundreds and even thousands of miles. So today, we are off to vegan Ilocos Sur. This is the trip I was talking about in my last vlog. This trip up north is very special because 30 years ago, my wife and I made this very same trip on the same 1983 BMW R100RT. "30 years ago, to reach Vegan, you had no choice but to take MacArthur Highway. We left Manila at 4 in the morning and didn't arrive until 5 in the afternoon. We passed through 48 towns in 6 provinces, and each of those towns met stop-and-go traffic. By the time we reached our hotel, we were so exhausted we skipped dinner and slept straight through and woke up at lunchtime the next day. Fast forward to today, we left Manila around 6:30 a.m. and at 7:30 a.m. stopped for coffee at Petron Lakeshore. And according to Waze, we should be arriving vegan around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Thanks to NLEX, SCTEX, and TPLEX, we should be bypassing almost half of those towns that we went through 30 years ago. Speaking of Waze, today a GPS app like this one on my phone will show the whole route, every gas station, and even my ETA or estimated time of arrival down to the minute. What once required memory, looking for markers and doing the math while on the road, is now just one glance at the screen. 30 years ago, a trip like this would require a lot of planning, a lot of real planning. I had a tank bag with me with a plastic pocket in front, and there I would slid a paper map. Now, that map was primarily used to identify the towns along the route. So every stop meant reviewing the route and memorizing the next towns, then relying on the kilometer markers you see along the road and BMW's clock to do a mental math of your estimated time of arrival in the next town. Now, fuel management was part of the planning too, because the maps don't really indicate where the next gas stations are, and you're assuming that each major town would have a gas station that's still open. Now, the R100RT, as I mentioned in my earlier vlog, had no fuel gauge, so I really had to know the bike very well. And I know that this particular bike, the R100RT, does about 15 kilometers per liter. Now, given I have a main tank which has 20 liters, that gives me a range of about 300 kilometers before I ran out of main fuel. And if ever I miscalculated, I know that I have a 4-liter reserve that can give me about 60 kilometers to look for the next gas station. Food wasn't really a major issue 30 years ago, because I knew that along the way we would find either a carinderia or sari-sari store to buy food and refreshments. Now, the maps don't really show where the gas stations are, and back then the concept of the gas station convenience store, I think, was only introduced in 1993, and that was only available in the Shell station along the North Expressway, which at that time we were not allowed to use. So every time we gas up, we'll just look for a sari-sari store or maybe a carinderia, to eat and to get refreshments. Today, the expressways, both north and south, have full service complexes. They're not just, they don't just provide convenience stores like Select, of Shell, Treats by Petron, and I forgot the one of Caltex. But they also provide clean restrooms, fast foods, restaurants, ATMs, and a lot more. In fact, these gas stations along the expressway have been known to be called destinations and not just a gas station. Aside from GPS, another technology that has made a difference for today's long distance touring rider is mobile communications. Back then, the only way that my wife and I would communicate while on the bike was by tapping. She would tap once to indicate that she wants to stop sometime soon. Two taps would mean that she needs to make a stop, that we need to make a stop very soon. And more than two taps, like three or four, meant that we need to stop right now. That was it. Tapping on my helmet. Today, with the advent of mobile phones, intercoms, like the cardos that we use now, we can talk the whole day, sharing stories, laughing, singing along to music that we can hear over our headphones. In fact, I even took a business call during this trip from a partner in Australia while I was cruising happily going north. We're gonna make a slight detour to go to this very special place where my wife and I started a tradition, some years back, that all of our vehicles, whether new or old, will be blessed. So we're going to Manawag and to have our R100RT blessed, so that the Lord will keep us safe, to ensure that we go home safely, to ensure that the bike does not break down, and in case it breaks down, we will be able to fix it along the way.
Dito siya nakatago. Ingat kayo ha, at kayo bin-expose. Mga motorsiklo rin ha, kahit big bike. Salamat. Ingat.
Thank you, Father.
Sa mga natapos na pong mabasbasan, kanilang mga sakyan, palipat na lang po sa...
As we entered Bawang La Union, I did not notice that my GoPro battery was already dying. So it stopped recording right after we entered Bawang. But we arrived vegan at around 3:30, about 3 or 3 to 3:30 in the afternoon. And we spent a couple of days in vegan, looking at the tourist sites, eating the local food. And then after 2 days, we left vegan at around 6:30 in the morning. The roads, the technology, and the conveniences have all changed. But one thing remains the same. 30 years ago and today, it's the pure joy of riding this BMW R100RT and the unforgettable experience of this journey itself. This RT runs great. After over 800 kilometers, the RT wants to keep on going. And that's what an Airhead is all about. The only thing that went wrong in this trip was this. We had insufficient balance on our easy trip. Not the RT's fault, but user error. Bye for now.